Have you ever stopped to observe where your thoughts come from? Like, I've had moments where I'm lost in my work or an activity, and out of nowhere, I get a thought about someone or something that was non related to the activity I was doing, and then there's like a realization, where did this thought come from? Like, clearly, that person was the last thing on my mind, so I thought, no pun intended. And then there are moments where I've been, okay, I'm going to sit here and observe and see if I can catch the exact moment of when a thought flows in. Or I'll choose to meditate and attempt to empty my mind, but then the opposite happens and every thought rushes in. Now tell me I'm not alone and that you too have experienced this. Welcome, I am Daisy, your hostess. In this video, I will be reading the book titled Constructive Thought, or How to Obtain What You Desire by Benjamin Johnson. And I'll get to it in a bit. I just want to share a few things. I've been doing some research to learn more about where thoughts come from, and it seems that science and spiritualism have different explanations. Spiritualists believe thoughts aren't solely generated by the physical brain, but that it's a combination of both physical and non-physical action, with the mind acting as a receiver and an interpreter, connected to the infinite source of ideas, a broader consciousness, the universal mind, which could be influenced by other factors such as angels, spirit guides, things like that. On the other hand, scientists take a more practical approach where they believe thoughts originate from the physical aspect of the interaction of electrochemical activity among neurons in the brain, creating circuits that represent information, memories, and ideas influenced by sensory input, neurotransmitters, coupled with the body's sensory organs interacting with the external environment. Yet, there is not much in explaining how all this clicks with the brain and the subjective consciousness. Now, staying here with the science side of things in regard to consciousness and subjective consciousness, there seems to be no clear scientific data to explain subjectivity, but rather describes necessary conditions for it. Many scientists have made great contributions to the field, and I've left a few links for you to review in the description of this video, and you will discover that science does not explain how material biological processes acquire subjectivity, yet the fact is that subjectivity exists. Clearly, science and spiritualism may disagree on many things. It seems that there is one thing that they both agree on, albeit they use different words and terminology to explain it, and that is that the universe is constant, indivisible energy. Having set the stage for that, some say that thoughts are things, but these things can't be touched, so to speak, so they are more an example of psychic energy, or another way to say it, mental energy, which then we may say that thoughts are cognitive perceptions, ideas, and beliefs emerging from a mind, flowing through chemical activity in the brain, flowing through a field of electromagnetic energy. And then there's the idea that we are what we think. But then that leads to the paradox question, what came first? The chicken or the egg? The thought or the person? It is because you are before you think. If you are not there, thoughts are not there. Yet the act of being allows us to observe and direct our thoughts. And so this is where constructive thinking comes into play, because we can either be controlled by our thoughts or we choose to control and direct our thoughts. Scholars say that based on brain state transitions in neuroimaging data, people may have 4 to 8 thoughts per minute, which could possibly be several thousand thoughts per day, many of which can be classified as spontaneous or involuntary. It's like having one's own private theater. They add that when people experience better control of stress levels, emotions, and daily experiences may improve the quality of these spontaneous thoughts. And as I'm ready to turn the page, if you have been trying to rein in your thoughts, I hope that within these pages you may find a golden nugget or two to add to your toolbox as you journey through life. Constructive Thought, or How to Obtain What You Desire, by Benjamin Johnson. The secret of attainment is the vital spark hidden in each one of us, but only fanned into the flame of effort by desire. The tiniest spark, kindling the smallest flame, may be kept alive by faith and so fed by resolution that every obstacle to advancement will be destroyed and the path to success made clear as day. Foreword. The possibilities of constructive thought are so fascinating, its daily use so practical, that the demand for its better understanding is constantly growing. The thoughts here presented belong to whom? I wish I might tell you, but truly, I do not know. Aside from many quotations I have given, thought after thought has appeared, fairly insisting that it be used. As each thought came, I wrote it down for the purpose of putting in concise form the information by so many desired. If there be such things as original thoughts, some of these may be so named, but how can one be sure? With my mind equipped with a new thought wireless, I may have caught and appropriated ideas that someone else was sending, or from the reading of Epictetus, Emerson, Allen, Brown, Hugel, Hudson, Fletcher, Millets, Mulford, Martin, Town, Larson, Randall, Sears, and others. My subconscious mind may have absorbed and given back to me the thoughts of these good writers and able teachers. At any rate, should I find that I am a mental pirate, I shall not grieve, for I will know that only because I desired for intensely to help others, that which I needed came to me as proof of the law. With all these great minds aiding me, I am certain one will find in this book to help one needs, and I believe it can be referred to from time to time with benefit. I feel positive it may be used to help others, as I have endeavored to help in the work of replacing instead of repressing, of changing the old form of pessimistic thought for the new one of health, prosperity, and happiness. Signed, Benjamin Johnson, March 16, 1915. Chapter 1. Breathing. Your character represents the result of the habits you have formed. Your former habits show your manner of thought. Your manner of thought is in turn affected by your method of breathing. Would you succeed? Then breathe systematically, intelligently, and happily. The air is filled with life-giving oxygen ready for you to use. It is already yours, but you must give it space in which to do its work. Unless you have the force of will necessary to breathe correctly, not only once but many times a day, you have not sufficient will to develop your mental faculties to their greatest capacity. Hence, your thinking will be limited. You have probably, like many other people, considered breathing as a natural process not worth bothering about, and so in common with many others, you have starved certain organs of your body, impoverished your brain, and then sought for some remedy to act as a tonic. All the time the real remedy has been within your reach, but you have willfully refused to acknowledge it or use it. You surely desire to succeed? Then begin your work for success and for thought building by realizing to the utmost your need of giving to the lungs the greatest natural tonic and purifying agent for the blood known, oxygen. In order to take in the greatest amount of oxygen, all breathing exercises should be practiced in the open air or by an open window. Deep, full breaths should be inhaled through the nostrils, held for a few moments in order to purify the air that remain in the lungs from former inhalations, and then should be exhaled through the mouth. Ordinarily, about 1/2 pint of oxygen is taken in an average breath. When the effort is made to breathe from the abdomen, throwing back the shoulders and taking in all that the lungs will hold, this amount is tremendously increased. And when one realizes that in one person's lungs there are between 725 and 800 million air cells, not half of which are ever used by the person who takes only the average breath, it readily can be seen that a great many pints of oxygen would be needed to stimulate all these air cells to action. The blood passes through the lungs about 3 times a minute, carrying the carbon dioxide that should be given off and searching for the oxygen to be inhaled for the purpose of purifying and revitalizing. If the blood fails to receive the supply of oxygen it needs, the entire system immediately shows the result of this deficiency by weak tissues, inefficient digestive juices, and a low vitality. The amount of blood in the body of a person is estimated to be about 1/16 of the body weight. And this blood has fully 2,000 miles of tubing through which to circulate. For every heartbeat, nearly 3 ounces of blood will be forced along through this tubing, so that in 24 hours, fully 8 tons of blood passes through the lungs, giving off carbon dioxide and taking in oxygen. If the breathing apparatus is not in perfect working order, or if the ventilation is not good and the person is breathing air that is impure, but little of the carbon dioxide can be given off, and the accumulated poison shows its presence by a sensation of weariness or by weakness. The great pumping organ, the heart, is one of the first to suffer from the deficiency of oxygen. One would not expect an automobile to operate without gasoline. It would, however, be just as sensible as to expect good work from a heart when the blood is not being fully supplied with oxygen. The carbon dioxide can only get out of the lungs as the oxygen gets in, so the other organs of excretion will accordingly have more work thrown on them, and the skin and kidneys will in turn suffer. It is also estimated that fully 2 pounds of oxygen are needed for every pound of food in the blood to maintain the body in a healthful condition. Men in ordinary walks of life are said to take in about 1/2 the oxygen really needed. Women take in about 1/4 of the amount necessary for perfect health. Shallow breathers never take in enough to give the body what is demanded. Breathed air in any room is always deadly and can rightfully be accused of causing all sorts of physical disturbances. Frequent breathing exercises are necessary because oxygen is unlike food in that it cannot be stored up. It must be taken in often. As an example of an instant effect of bad air, take anyone accustomed to out-of-door life. Place this person in the ordinary office. In nearly every instance, a violent headache, a feeling of weariness, and a general depression will result. Continue this seclusion for a time, and the eyes lose their luster, the cheeks become colorless, and the vitality is lowered. True, many people always have and always will exist under such conditions, but to truly live, in the broadest sense of the word, something else is necessary, and that something is the opportunity for drinking in nature's best tonic, oxygen, at frequent intervals. A very simple plan is to practice deep, rhythmic breathing on your way to the office in the morning, when going to and coming from lunch in the afternoon, and before retiring. If you feel tired mentally during the day, go to the window, throw back your shoulders, and take several deep breaths. Does your head ache? Are you very dull, depressed? Nature's remedy is yours for the mere taking. Naturally, too, if the various organs of the body are affected by the amount of oxygen received, the entire nervous system becomes in turn either efficient or inefficient, and if the supply of oxygen is not great enough, the brain cannot properly generate, store, and transmit the nerve current. Another feature of the deep breath, and one not usually considered, is that by such an inhalation, the diaphragm, nature's principal aid for exercising the internal organs, contracts during inhalation and exerts a gentle pressure upon the liver, stomach, and large intestines, thus performing a gentle internal massage. For the reduction of superfluous flesh, deep breathing exercises are especially beneficial, as by this means much of the extra fatty material can be consumed. Breathing, therefore, can be shown to affect every organ of the body, either for good or ill, though ordinarily it is considered an act of but little importance. The effect on the mind of breathing is easily understood when one understands just what oxygen does. But there is still another point to consider, and that is the effect of the mind on breathing. Anger, fear, suspense are all indicated by short, rapid breathing. People who are always sad and despondent are invariably shallow breathers. On the other hand, contented, well-poised, calm natures breathe deeply and systematically as a matter of course. Knowing that the state of mind affects the breathing and the manner of breathing in turn affects the bodily health, one feels a combination of will and action especially desirable. Therefore, before commencing any breathing exercise, the mind should be calm, free from worry or any disturbing emotion, and the will used to breathe deeply for the purpose of taking in an especially large supply of oxygen. To begin with, prove that you are breathing deeply by placing your hand lightly over the diaphragm and watching the effect on the muscles. If the muscles are not affected, try again until you know they are being exercised. Then, standing erect, empty the lungs and slowly breathe until the lower parts of the lungs have been filled. Then fill the middle parts and then the upper lungs. Hold the breath for an instant and exhale through the nostrils. Repeat and hold the breath while you count 5. In the meantime, pressing your shoulders back so you will increase the breathing space. Then exhale, counting the same number. Do not make this a difficult task by closing your teeth or forcing the breath, but work easily, endeavoring to breathe rhythmically, increasing the time of holding the breath until you can count 10. Always practice in the open air or before an open window. Another simple, though excellent method to practice breathing is to stand erect and then empty the lungs as you bring the hands together directly in front of the body. Then clench the hands, commence the work of inhalation, and as you inhale, bring the clenched hands back to the sides of the body, throwing the shoulders back at the same time. With a very little practice, good lung expansion can be developed in this way. It is, of course, understood that in all deep breathing exercises, the breath must be taken in through the nostrils with the mouth kept tightly closed. But in the exhaling, the lips may be parted and the breath allowed to go out through the mouth. Many people who have suffered for years from insomnia have been able to cure this trouble by practicing breathing exercises after retiring, insisting with every breath, "I am sleepy," until finally sleep comes. Women troubled by despondency have also been cured by practicing breathing exercises before a mirror, smiling back at their reflection and declaring, "I am happy," until at least 25 deep breaths have been taken. One woman who was cured by this process declared that she felt like such a fool when she was practicing this exercise that she laughed every time she thought of it, and believed that this in itself had much to do with her recovery. Whether she was foolish or not, the fact remains that she was changed from a melancholy, emaciated, nervous wreck with suicidal tendencies to a normal being in a very short time. So, before going on to the bigger things that seem so necessary to our dream of accomplishment, we should all of us be possessed of sufficient determination to breathe properly and for health every time we have the opportunity, and that will mean several times a day. Many exponents of thought building insist that their students make every breathing exercise a thought exercise in the following manner. As you inhale the first 5 breaths, say, I am breathing in oxygen, the greatest known purifying agent, and thus helping every organ of the body. As you exhale these breaths, say, I am thrusting out of the lungs the impure air, thus assisting in the work of elimination. With the next 5 breaths, assert, as I take in the purifying oxygen, I am also breathing in the elements of success from the universal supply. As you exhale, declare, I am casting out every destructive thought with as much ease as I eliminate this breath. Try this exercise 4 times a day, and by the end of the 3rd day, you will be a convert. By the end of the week, you will feel new ambition, and in a month, you will be positively hungry for an opportunity to practice on more difficult exercises, while you still use the breathing exercise as a pleasant daily task. Chapter 2, Thinking. Some people study all their lives and at their deaths have learned everything excepting how to think. Once the attention has been called to the very simple act of breathing, it becomes evident to every intelligent mind that this act must be performed well if the body is to be kept in good condition. Breathing is, of course, a physical process, just as thought is a mental process. But for the one person who is careless about breathing, we shall find 100 who are admittedly and unreservedly careless in thinking. One often hears it said, I wouldn't have hurt her feelings for the world, but the thought popped into my mind and I blurted it out. Or, I do try, but I can't help thinking of all the trouble I have been through. Or, I just can't help it when these thoughts come to me. All excuses are poor ones. No one can make you think anything unless you choose to do so. No one can influence your thoughts unless you allow it. No thought of past happiness, nor of present misery, hate, revenge, and anger can possibly exist in your mind unless you allow your mind to become the worthless meeting place for your own destructive thoughts, as well as for those expressed by other people. You desire to do much in this world, to become known, praised, appreciated. Then, first of all, learn to think constructively. It means the beginning of everything. True, you may mention instance after instance where men and women of evil minds, worse acts, and bad influences have apparently been well, happy, and prosperous. I say apparently, but that is all. Emerson says, always pay. For first or last, you must pay your entire debt. Persons and events may stand for a time between you and justice, but it is only a postponement. You must pay at last your own debt. The price of health, wealth, and happiness, 3 qualities all desire, must be paid for by right thinking. Dr. Charles Gilbert Davis, after years of observation, asserts emphatically, if a thought can in an instant of time dilate or contract a blood vessel, if it can increase or decrease the secretion of gland, if it can hasten or retard the action of the heart, if it can turn the hair gray in a single night, if it can force tears from the eyes, if it can in an instant produce great bodily weakness, if it can produce insomnia, if, as has often occurred, it can bring instantaneous death, then is it not natural for us to conclude without further argument that it may bring about a more or less continuous derangement of the physical organism that we call disease? I have seen the most wonderful effects follow a fit of anger. After an outburst of passion, the function of every gland in the body is impaired. Time and time again, I have observed acute illness in an infant when it was permitted to nurse immediately after the mother had engaged in a quarrel, and on more than one occasion I have seen death follow in a few hours. The standing army of the human body is the corpuscles of the blood. Upon them we depend to heal the wounds, build new tissue, and attack the poisonous bacilli that may attempt to enter our systems. Thought produces disease because of its action on the corpuscles of the blood. These corpuscles are wonderfully influenced by the mind. An outraged conscience, hate, envy, anger, and fear crush the vitality out of them and leave the citadel of life exposed. But faith, hope, happiness, and love create them and send them swarming through the body till every fiber and tissue throbs with life. This is demonstrated by the microscope. Elmer Gates, a noted authority speaking of the fact that so many people endeavor to consider brains as accidents and thoughts something over which they have no control, writes as follows: anybody may go into the business of building his own mind. The thinking organ undergoes perpetual changes in cell construction, and it is never finished. Even in old age, it is not too late. Let the mind builder systemically devote an hour each day to calling up pleasant memories and ideas. Let him summon the finer feelings of benevolence and unselfishness, which are called up only now and then. Let him take his regular exercise like the swinging of a dumbbells. Let him gradually increase the time devoted to the physical gymnastics, giving them 60 or 90 per diem. At the end of a month, he will find the change in himself surprising. The alteration will be apparent in his actions and thoughts. It will have been registered in the cell structure of his brain. Cells useful for good thinking will have been well developed, while others productive of evil will have shrunk. Morally speaking, the man will be a great improvement on his former self. So authority after authority might be quoted, and all of them be found to agree on these main points. Scientists have proved that the only difference in the various forms of substance is in the degree of motion or vibration of the particles composing the substance. In a man, as a result of thought and will, the tiny atoms are formed into molecules and the molecules into electrons, the rapidity with which they are formed being in proportion to the intensity of the desire and the strength of will exerted to keep this desire constantly before one. On this theory that like attracts like, man thus has it within his power, by the continuous use of right thought, to attract to himself that which is needed for further development by the law of magnetic attraction. Evil thinking can be and is equally productive, the system of development being the same, only in the latter case destructive thought is indulged in, and sooner or later the penalty for such indulgence must be paid. In connection with this idea, it will be seen that the quality of thought developed has also beneficial or detrimental effects upon those to whom it is expressed. In every neighborhood, examples will be seen of this, if one recalls the effect produced by noble characters and by the words of encouragement they utter, or by the brilliant yet dissipated people and their effect on weaker natures by reason of their witty, though possibly obscene remarks. One of the great reformers, who has done much in the way of teaching the power of thought, declares that the great reason it is so hard to help the unfortunate is not because they are such great sinners and lack of willpower, but because their minds are so filled with the thoughts of self-condemnation and self-pity that there is not left room for faith or hope. The woman who would grow and develop, therefore, must consider her mind as a garden, which she has the opportunity to plant with beautiful flowers that will shed their fragrance on those who come that way, or with noxious weeds that exhale their poisonous fumes on all the passerbys. It is simply a matter of choice. What course have you decided to pursue? Chapter 3. Thinking Cheerfully. A quote from Sam Exton Foles. When all the world's cold and drear, just smile. And you're losing all that's dear, just smile. For everything that goes today will return again some other way, bringing with it fourfold pay, just smile. When you're feeling kinda blue, just smile. And when your yearly interest due, just smile. There is nary a thing in all the land, from a mountain to a grain of sand, but yours for the asking, so feel grand and smile. A physician says, in the maintenance of health and the cure of disease, cheerfulness is a most important factor. Its power to do good, like a medicine, is not an artificial stimulation to be followed by reactions and greater waste, but the effect of cheerfulness is an actual life-giving influence through a normal channel, the results which reach every part of the system. It brightens the eye, makes ruddy the complexion, brings elasticity to the step, and promotes all the inner force which life is sustained. The blood circulates more freely, the oxygen comes to its home in these tissues, health is promoted, and disease is banished. Why studious, thoughtful, and particularly good people have in the past felt it their duty to go about with care and responsibility written all over their faces, and every expression that even looked like a smile tucked out of sight, has always been a mystery to me. Why businessmen of large affairs feel that the wrinkled effect is the proper thing for their foreheads, and that lips drawn tightly together show determination, is also perplexing. Why good-looking, attractive women persist in cultivating repose to such an extent that their faces are as expressionless as a mummy's is another surprise. Just the mere act of smiling relaxes the muscles of the face, makes the eyes brighter, and changes the entire atmosphere about one. Of course, it goes without saying that well-bred people never parade their troubles, their ailments, or their disappointments, but that is no reason why they should tuck away and repress them till their faces are an index to their mental condition. Whether in the pulpit or on the stage, in political, business, or social life, a magnetic personality and a winning smile that seems to indicate a true desire to be friendly will do more to attract and hold popularity than any other one attribute. In one of the largest stores in Chicago, there is a floor walker who is always surrounded by questioners. No matter what department people want to visit, they like to question this man because he answers in a manner so sincere that each person feels his interest. His popularity with his fellow workers is equally great, and his being there is an asset to the store. He will be promoted, certainly, for his smile and his manner have brought him from a ragged urchin who peddled papers to errand and parcel boy, then to clerk, and now to this position. There are many policemen in Chicago, and all of them undoubtedly try to do their duty, but some of them occasionally forget to smile. One policeman who is on duty in a very busy place never forgets that sunshine is much more popular than thunderclouds, so there he stands day after day, with a beaming smile and a nod, looking as though wet, cold, or burning days were mere incidents in his existence and had no bearing on his temperament. He is only one of the many who are employed in the same work, yet at holiday times it is said that more than 1,000 people make it a point to stop and offer a remembrance and wish him a Merry Christmas. A large building in which the elevator service is a serious business had a man employed as starter who managed all the boys systematically, remembered every tenant by name, and was so uniformly cheerful that a keen businessman who had watched him for some time finally made him an offer to manage a restaurant. He accepted and in a few short years became a part owner. And a very well-known modiste, noted for her style and her unmanageable temper, pays a large salary to one of her assistants because the latter has never been known to lose her temper, and she is so uniformly cheerful that her influence upon both the employees and the patrons is most beneficial. A young widow, left alone with 2 small children, was given a position in a smart shop in the city. She possessed a cheerful disposition and declared that as a smile was her best asset, she was going to use it. She, of course, was tactful and sensible, but that smile won her way past older employees into the manager's office. She became Mrs. Manager and today is owner of the smart shop. A prominent physician who is noted for his fashionable and wealthy following was consulted recently by a young woman who was rich, beautiful, talented, happily married and discontented with all. After a careful examination, he said, "Now, Mrs. X, I'm going to hurt your feelings because it is the only thing to do. Physically, you are sound as can be. Mentally, you are undeveloped. You are selfish, thoughtless, critical, and morbid. Your only salvation is to become interested in the work of helping others. Stop thinking of yourself and begin being cheerful. It is your duty to every one of your friends. It costs you nothing to smile pleasantly, yet you smile as though if it were an effort. Now, unless you take this prescription and follow my advice, I must decline to continue to be your physician." For a moment, she was angry, but she had confidence in the doctor and so agreed to follow his advice. When she opened the prescription, she found the following advice: laugh heartily 3 times a day before meals, for effect on the liver. Smile at yourself in the mirror at least 6 times a day for exercise to facial muscles. Smile at everyone you meet for the effect on them. Walk 5 miles a day in the open air. Read nothing but optimistic literature and practice thinking of others by helping someone every day. The reading of the prescription produced one good effect, for though provoked, Mrs. X laughed. Every time she thought of it, she smiled. Just for the novelty of the thing, she also tried the advice, and today she is quoted as an example of the famous doctor's skill, for she is indeed a changed woman. Only she and the doctor know what her real ailment was and what the cure entailed. Cheerfulness should be considered just as much a part of everyday's task as talking. It is not only helpful to you because it means less strain on your energy when you can go through a day smiling, but it is also infectious, and those about you soon take the spirit and vie with you as to which one can get the most pleasure out of life. Every day offers you the new possibilities for practice, new people to practice upon, and practice, as everyone knows, makes perfect. Keep at this practice constantly until finally, when you are checking up on your good qualities, you will be able to write in large letters as the greatest aid to smooth running in your home and in your business and your daily life, the one word: cheerfulness. Chapter 4. Troubles or problems? Which? Troubles are usually the brooms and shovels that smooth the road to a good man's future. The ignorant man curses the rains that fall upon his head, not realizing that it brings abundance to drive away hunger. In general, every evil to which we do not succumb is a benefactor. If you serve an ungrateful master, serve him the more. Put God in your debt. The longer the payment is withholden, the better for you. For compound interest upon compound interest is the rate of this exchequer. The average person realizes that to attain muscular development, strenuous exercises are necessary, performed with regularity day after day. If one is training for some great event in the world of athletics, a still greater sacrifice of time is exacted, a more rigorous diet is insisted upon, and the result is a physical endurance that enables the survivors of this test to appear before the public in the big events. Mental development is built on the same idea. If you would be a great thinker, a wonderful product, an example of what thought can do, you must also be prepared to pay the price by exercising your mental faculties vigorously and systematically, limiting your diet of careless thinking and doing without some things so that you may have others. From every experience in life, something can be learned that will be of benefit. What might seem disaster may be turned into positive victory, but to see this is to be able to look from within out, not from without in, as one usually does. I once heard a story of a countrywoman who was so invariably even-tempered and serene that her husband decided to make her lose her temper by getting her everything she did not want instead of the things she requested. She placidly utilized every substitute, declaring she had found many new uses for things she had not before realized she could employ. Finally, the husband utterly disgusted with her serenity, decided to try one last plan and said to himself triumphantly, "I'll make her give up this time, for I will have the boy take to the house only the gnarled, crooked stumps of trees for the stove instead of the straight sticks to which she is accustomed." An hour later, the husband crept cautiously into the kitchen, only to be met by a beaming wife who declared enthusiastically, "Those crooked pieces of wood are just what I wanted. They nestle around the pots and pans so comfortably and give a much better heat." The experience of the countrywoman affords an example of how every trying circumstance in life may be handled. True, things may displease us for the time being and seem almost impossible to endure, but a little consideration shows us they are but harbingers of better things. Sometimes distressing events are wonderful tests of our endurance and our faith in the ultimate outcome. Others teach us the value of self-control. A disappointment is always an avenue to something better. If, instead of standing dumbfounded and dismayed, we but push forward in another direction in our journey toward the ideal, remembering always the value of retaining a cheerful appearance and an optimistic state of mind, regardless of what has happened. It is not only practical but scientific to live on the sunny side of life, for even the most dyed-in-the-wool and skeptical scientists are now admitting that the greatest number of baffling diseases have their origin in a depressed or morbid mental condition. The study of the life of every man or woman who has ever succeeded in attaining any great prominence will inevitably reveal the story of some difficulty put out of countenance by a resolute endeavor. John Bunyan might never have written Pilgrim's Progress had he not been cast into jail, where he had plenty of time for reflection. Many of Beethoven's masterpieces were composed after he had lost his hearing. Isolated as he was from conversation, it gave him more opportunity to pour out his soul in music. In more modern times, Paderewski, undaunted by the jeers of his fellow musicians, practiced 14 hours a day, endured privation, even lack of food, and emerged a victorious genius. Sir Thomas Lipton, who was at sea one time when it became necessary to lighten the weight of the boat by tossing the freight overboard, turned disaster into good advertising by painting Lipton's Tea on every package, thus making the name known to every ocean liner that picked up one of the stray packages. Helen Keller's misfortune has developed a system of teaching the blind that has meant benefit to countless unfortunates, and her optimistic spirit has put to shame all malcontents who pause to think of her wonderful courage. She is an illustration of one who has attracted happiness to herself by her own sweet nature. The most prolific hymn writer in the world, blind for years, is said to have been the means of converting more people to Christianity than any revivalist. She lived, as well as she wrote, words of praise and thanksgiving. At her death, every newspaper in the country not only printed the story of her life, but gave her full and generous credit for the good she had accomplished. And, as a consequence, Fanny Crosby's name will stand forever in the Hall of Fame. Instances could be easily multiplied, showing how resolute souls have conquered every condition and have been victorious as a natural consequence of perseverance and determination. The average person fails occasionally to recognize the saving grace hidden in the disappointment, and commences to complain before she has tried to look at the other side. Birds could not fly unless it were for the resistance of the air. Trains refuse to catch hold on a smooth track. The wheels slip and it becomes necessary to sprinkle sand over the tracks in order to produce a rougher surface. So-called troubles are better named problems and are often blessings in disguise, for they show us our weak spots and thus prepare us for some greater test. Chapter 5. Thinking Harmoniously. Good thoughts are blessed guests and should be heartily welcomed, well fed, and much sought after. Like roses, they give out a sweet smell if laid up in a jar of memory. Occasionally, one will hear someone say, I can't see any use in practicing constructive thinking. I wanted success, and I thought success, and never feared failure, yet failure came to me. Investigate such a case, and you will find this person a tense, nervous body, flying into a temper at the slightest provocation, blaming everyone for everything that goes wrong, condemning without investigating, and keeping the entire family upset. Or she is one of the people who bears a grudge and wants to get even with somebody. Or she is morose and despondent about some condition, or is indulging in self-condemnation. In short, no matter who she is, if she exhibits worry, impatience, strife, resentment, or keeps herself in a tense state repressing such emotions, she is developing a form of destructive thinking that will naturally prevent the development of her other mental pictures. You may say, but I do try not to feel angry or resentful or impatient. I do not worry and I do control myself. But a thought of this kind snatches me sometimes unawares. So what can I do but repress it instantly? Here is another mistake. Repressing is as bad as expressing in many ways, because all energy must be embodied in some form. The proper way to handle these numberless little daily irritations is neither to repress nor express the thought that provoked them, but instead replace them with a constructive thought by making some assertions such as, these things have no power to upset me or take any of my ideas from success. Or, no one can hurt me but myself. My enemies cannot harm me unless I allow them to do so. Or, I must not blame anyone. I cannot see all faces of the situation, hence I must believe he or she acted in a way that seemed best at the time. Or, I am strong enough to handle any situation. This seeming annoyance is but a trial to see if my willpower will sustain me. By the system's strong, helpful thoughts will so constantly replace the harmful ones that your idea of success will not be disturbed. The best musical instruments are those that have been so accustomed to the harmonious sounds produced by the masters that to play upon them is a joy, while to hear them is indeed a rare treat long to be remembered. It is for this reason that musicians will pay almost any price for a violin that has been played upon by a master. The mind of a human being is much more sensitive than a violin and shows an immediate appreciation of harmonious thoughts constructively expressed by added power. The first rule given for the use of subconscious mind is to place the conscious mind in a calm, positive condition. Keep it well poised and free from agitation. This does not mean for a moment each day, or at night, or when expressing a desire, but instead maintaining this condition each day and always before going to sleep, so that the conscious mind may rest and the subconscious may work without hindrance. Harmonious thought is always manifested in a beautifully attractive and magnetic personality. It is not the easiest thing to acquire, but once the habit is established, the result will be so wonderfully pleasing that the works of securing it will never again be mentioned. Quarrels, heated arguments, criticism of others, listening to or repeating petty gossip or scandal, attending morbid plays, reading about and discussing murders or stories of crime, living over past troubles, feeling jealousy, envy, or the desire to get even with someone, all will result in an inharmonious condition of mind. This in turn attracts more inharmonious thoughts and leads to despondency. All thought energy produces a thought atmosphere that is instantly perceived by anyone who is in the least sensitive. Just as the magnet attracts certain metals and repels others, so you, by your harmonious or inharmonious mental condition, either attract or repel the people in sympathy with your mind. The day that starts wrong can often be made right by a single effort of the will and the resolution not to be upset by trifles. A simple and effective method for overcoming an inharmonious condition brought about by immediate proximity with someone of who is forcefully sending out destructive thoughts, or by your own carelessness in allowing these thoughts to remain in your mind, is to get away from everyone for a few moments, sit down, relax, breathe deeply and rhythmically for a few moments, and insist that you are in harmony with the universe. The constant repetition of the words, I am in harmony, I am in harmony, I am in harmony, has a such soothing effect that it is strange it is not often used. Yet, because we take it for granted that people must indulge in destructive thoughts, no one is at all surprised when a relative or friend rushes wildly into a room, prances about, and exclaims, I am so mad, I can hardly stand it. If the same person came in quietly declaring, I am harmonious, nearly everyone would look up in surprise or whisper to one another, isn't she queer? Why? Merely because constructive thought is not used in everyday life by the majority of people, and so for that reason, it is often well to think deeply and practice silently. A very practical illustration of the use of harmonious thought, or indeed the use of any thought, is made by comparing its action with that of the wireless telegraph. When this instrument was first proposed, the members of the Cant Club were positive it was not feasible. It was discussed, proposed, rejected, revived, criticized, and finally tried. The moment a message was sent and received, the public were wildly enthusiastic, and the doubters forgot they had ever anything but faith in the venture. Today, as a result of this invention, the doings of the world may be known by those in mid-ocean. The businessman keeps track of his affairs, thousands of lives are saved. Yet all these wonderful advances have been made possible only because man thought, believed, worked, and proved that a wireless station erected on land could convey a sound wave to a station constructed on a liner in mid-ocean. The sending of thought waves is just as plausible, equally possible, and as truly practicable, for they may be sent longer distances and they travel with greater velocity. In this connection, one must also bear in mind that a perfectly equipped wireless station must be able to send as well as receive messages. Unless your instrument is perfectly attuned and in harmony, you cannot send clearly, nor can you receive the messages of health, prosperity, strength, and abundance as forcibly as they are sent. And most important of all, you separate yourself from your source of supply, universal consciousness, by getting out of vibration. As soon as you are able to bear these facts in mind, you will make haste to banish even a trace of inharmony from your thoughts, for you will know that until you have acquired poise and self-control, your progress will be retarded by your own mental condition. One of the most eminent workers in this field of thought development states that he worked alone for 5 years before he saw the results he desired from his efforts, because he was associated during this time with strong-minded, sarcastic, critical, and antagonistic people. However, he persevered until he overcame, and now he is teaching the rest of the world from his own experience. You can make your wireless send out your messages of success until your thought is recognized, or if you so choose, you can spell failure. Some will receive your message and respond. One little woman who was overcome much on her road to prosperity tells me she always thinks of her mind as a wireless station, and she telegraphs success, love, harmony, and wealth waves every day of her life. When things seem a little trying, she starts with harmony. When everything is smooth, she works hardest on success, and her messages bring back the answers she desires in the way of better business, truer friends, and more desirable acquaintances. Like attracts like is an infallible law in the thought of world. If you desire harmony, be harmonious yourself. Chapter 6. Working, Relaxing. Man must work that is as certain as the sun, but he may work grudgingly or he may work gratefully. He may work as a man or as a machine. There is no work so rude he may not exalt it, no work so impassive that he may not breathe a soul into it, no work so dull that he may not even enliven it. Man is kept alive by work and dies either because he will not or cannot work. If you want knowledge, you must toil for it. If food, you must toil for it. And if pleasure, you must toil for it. The best way to live is to work well. Good work is the daily test and safeguard of personal health. After you have learned to breathe, think, and create a mental picture, your desire to manifest your wish in your own life can only be brought about by the act of working. It may be that for some time after you have dreamed and planned, you will continue to work in the same old way as far as external appearances go, but in reality, you will be going ahead with a very different feeling, for you will know you are fitting yourself for something better. You may be developing speed, accuracy, observation, knowledge of human nature, ability to execute, or any one of 100 qualities necessary in your bigger life. If you are wise enough to realize the benefit of working happily and easily, or starting at the right time and stopping when you have finished, if you know how to play as well as to work, and if you insist on a little playtime every day, you have really accomplished much. If absorbed by the fascination of the subject, you keep on working 12, 14, 16 hours a day, tensely and without interruption, you will pay the penalty. Perhaps the one person who can be quoted as an exception to this rule up to the recent moment is Thomas A. Edison, who has been known to work 18 and even 20 hours without cessation. But he explains his powers of endurance by saying that to him work is play, and he feels that by his efforts he can give the world many things that will be of wonderful assistance. Working continuously is scarcely the rule in business today, as there are countless interruptions taking the mind and time of the workers, so that although office hours may be long, the hours spent in work are comparatively few. Working hard is not difficult, but working hard and worrying too is destructive to both physical and mental force. Working well is impossible if one dislikes the work, carries personal grudges into daily life, fails to control the temper, and has no self-confidence and no desire to eliminate destructive thoughts. To continue to draw a salary for work done when you permit such conditions of mind to exist is doing an injustice to three people: yourself, for you will deteriorate rather than progress; to your employer, for you are taking money and not giving value received; and to some other person who would, if given the opportunity, do gladly what you are doing half-heartedly. Your duty in such a case is either to withdraw and give someone else this chance, or stop being sorry for yourself because you do not draw a larger salary and commence making yourself worthy of the one that you are drawing now. Instead of looking at your fellow workers with a critical eye and looking at the business that is giving you a livelihood with positive loathing, take a mental inventory. Be honest with yourself, and you will admit you are where you are because you are as you are, and that until you change, no progress is possible. Opportunities come to those who are ready for them, just as surely as night follows day, but you must know an opportunity when you see it. This will keep your mind alert. The world is full of people who are looking for sympathy because their work is not congenial, and well-meaning friends continue to be sorry for them instead of showing them that all this trouble is the result of their own weakness and inefficiency. Sniveling men always bewailing the fact that they have had a chance, weepy women bemoaning their sad and lonely lot, will always exist because they prefer to be parasites, not because they are obliged to remain in this condition. One young woman who came to me for help told me in tones of deepest self-pity that she cried herself to sleep nearly every night because she was so lonesome, hated to work, and couldn't bear her employer. She had been in the same position for 2 years without any sign of advancement. I asked her if she had any way of knowing she had improved the work in her department since she had taken it, and she answered no. Then I asked her if she had ever thought of any method of improving it and made the suggestion to her employer. She replied, "Yes, I have thought of several things, but I have been afraid to suggest them." Next, I asked her if she knew anyone beside herself who was alone in the city and if she had tried to make life less doleful for her. She looked positively surprised at this question and said, "Why, no. Why should I look up a stranger and try to make her happy? Everyone away from home will naturally feel blue." With such a distorted viewpoint, it would seem almost hopeless to try to aid anyone. But the mere fact that she came for aid showed she had the desire. So I gave her a list of destructive thoughts, explained how they poisoned her mind, affected her health, made her unpopular, altered her facial expression, and paralyzed her efforts. I asked how many she needed to keep in her present line of work. She blushed and admitted she did not need any of them. Then I gave her a list of constructive thoughts, the declaration for every day, and told her to go away, cultivate a liking for her work and respect for her employer, and not to come back until she had gathered courage to make the suggestions for improvement in her department. In 2 weeks, she told me she liked her work better and had made the acquaintance of another girl from the country and had encouraged her not to be blue. 2 months passed before I saw her again, and then she told me she felt she had conquered herself. She loved her work, was devoted to the firm, and was now in charge of the office force. Best of all, she said her own experience of overcoming helped her with the other young women in her work of development. I could mention hundreds of other cases, but space forbids. Suffice it to say that in general, the real reason why people do not make more of an effort to progress is because, unless their efforts meet with instant recognition, they feel they are not appreciated. I ask all of those who have a better future in view to remember these truths. You are not working for appreciation, but development. Every time you cheat yourself. Every time you are careless, you develop more of the shiftless side of your nature. Every time you take advantage, you steal from your employer and yourself, your self-respect. Every time you steal time, you develop the tendency to procrastinate. Every time you hesitate to improve those under you, you indulge in cowardice and injure them as well as yourself. Every time a thing is wrong and you know it, you are committing a crime to allow it to go on unchecked. Better to be unpopular than dishonorable. Finally, to work well is to work heartily, earnestly, and honestly, seeing in all forms of work only that which is commendable and honorable. The happiest people in the world are those who work hard and who are busy at something all of the time. The most valuable crown is that of work well done. But before we stop telling about the beauties of work, we must also consider the necessities for relaxation. Repressing is dangerous. The explosion is sure to come, or there will be a breakdown. Replacing is natural, desirable, and beneficial. After the day's work, replace the thought of business by some form of amusement or some interesting study or something entirely different. Whatever you decide on doing, make it something you can do easily. The same form of work you have been doing all day may have a fascination for you. You may be like the laziest woman in Boston who furnished more stockings for the soldiers than anyone else because when the needles and yarns were placed in her hands, she was too lazy to stop. Learn to relax and replace. If you feel your hands clenched and your teeth pressed, try to imitate the dog who has just come out of the river and shakes the water from him. Get up, stretch the body as though after a yawn, and when you go to bed, make every muscle limp. Feel the idea of relaxation creeping over you, and then, insisting that you will have a good night's rest, declare as you breathe deeply, "I am harmony," until you drop to sleep. The experience of a very noted lecturer, a woman who has done much for herself and more for others, will help you understand relaxation far better than any rules I can give you. So I will repeat her experience as given to her pupils. For 6 years, I used all the force of my nature, and I have a strong one, compelling things to come my way. I would even force people to listen and accept my method of thought as well as anything I had to sell. I kept my mind alert as to what my competitor was doing, and I worried all the time for fear he would go ahead of me. So I worried and compelled people and worked day after day and night after night, too busy for any amusement, too tired for rest, too tense to relax. Yet I believed I was using thought, and that thought could make all things come to me. Finally, I broke down and immediately I abused every form of mental science and went to a physician. He looked me over, told me I was simply the result of an undeferred body and an overworked mind, that my greatest need was absolute rest and relaxation. Relaxation was a word I didn't like. I saw no use for it, but as I could not work, I decided to rest. I went away to a quiet spot, and there I found a book. To this day, I do not know who wrote that book, but the author, in referring to life, said in substance, "In the garden you find lilies, roses, pansies, minette, shrubbery, all kinds, growing peacefully side by side and taking from the air and sun and earth the nourishment needed, not by force or in spite of competition, but because of a natural law. They demand, expect, and receive. They show their beautiful faces to the world in the daytime, and knowing they have done their duty, they rest at night, contented to wait for the new day for further effort." The little paragraph opened my eyes. I had not been using thought, but abusing it. I had been forcing instead of attracting, worrying instead of working easily, fearing competition instead of making myself a center of such qualities that I would attract and hold that which I desired. Then I started to discipline my own mind. It wasn't easy, but I decided that if mind could take me into trouble, it must also be able to pull me out. So I changed the horses, used my will, made cheerfulness the driver, and soon I was out of the slough of despond and on the road of patient endeavor. Every time anything went wrong, I would say to myself, just as fast and often as I could, "I am harmony, I am harmony, I am harmony." I would first insist, "I am cheerful," then say, "I am strength." I read only cheerful books, sought cheerful companions, attended only bright plays, and in a short time, my improvement was remarked by all. Right here, I want to add another precaution. I did not want to waste any time in arguing or hearing that someone else had done, so I refused to discuss my condition or my methods of work with anyone. I never allowed a trouble to dwell in my mind. Where formerly I carried them about all day and then brought them out for review before I went to sleep, I not only finished them as they came up, but refused to think of them at all before retiring. I always breathed deeply and rhythmically, relaxing consciously. As I breathed, I felt I was absorbing from the universal consciousness power and strength and love and protection. No matter how tired or wearied I was or am, this exercise is wonderfully beneficial. It took me 6 months to get back what I had lost, but I had gained even more. For I am doing better work, getting more out of life, giving more to my friends, and my rules are these. I work faithfully, conscientiously, and happily. I play just as faithfully and conscientiously. I relax systematically every night and every time during the day that I have a moment by myself. I have absolute faith in the ultimate outcome of my desire. I have no fear of competition, criticism, or loss. I love life and feel ill will toward no human being. Chapter 7. Thought Elimination. The key to every man is his thought. Sturdy and defying though he look, he has a helm which he obeys, which is the idea after which all his facts are classified. He can only be reformed by showing him a new idea which commands his own. To develop the mind to the highest extent, it is necessary first of all to commence a work of elimination by absolutely banishing from the mental realm the 5 greatest criminals known. I refer to anger, hatred, fear, worry, and doubt. Where these thoughts exist, it is impossible for others to find an abiding place. They're usually associated in this manner. The man who hates vigorously and indulges his anger when forced to observe the objects of his hatred fears the results of the outbursts. This induces a state of worry, and his mind is filled with doubt as to how he will be regarded in the future. So, we shall regard anger as a vandal destroying everything without regard to value. Worry is a murderer, for when worry enters, peace of mind is killed. Hatred is a poisoner. One who hates intensely generates a poison that affects every function of the body and paralyzes the judgment. Fear is a highwayman, stealing every attribute that is of any value: self-confidence, self-respect, courage, ambition, ability. In short, every quality necessary for success will be taken as a matter of course. Doubt is a sneak thief, creeping about so cautiously and working so carefully that one hardly realizes he has been successful until a demand is made for faith, when behold, there is none left, for doubt is taking it all away. Worry and fear do a great deal of work together. In fact, they are almost invariably associated as in this manner. The good housekeeper often worries about the cost of her food, or the wear on the carpets, or the effect of the sun on the curtains, and fears that her money may not be enough to pay the bills. Forethought and planning for the house and such occurrence is right, but to worry is wrong and to fear is worse. For as a result of the use of both these qualities, happiness is destroyed, but the bills are not paid, nor is the cost of living decreased. The husband worries about expense, about his business, and what the other firm is doing. As a consequence, he comes home moody and disturbed, gets angry if questioned, creates a most inharmonious environment, and accomplishes nothing. The young woman hates her more attractive companions, fears that she will not retain her own popularity, doubts her ability to please, and worries over her shortcomings until, in reality, she becomes a wallflower. The student doubts her ability to master the lessons, fears an examination, worries over the future, becomes angry when told of her deficiencies, and spends so much of her time in destructive thought that she loses her opportunity for developing constructive thinking. The servant breaks a dish and, fearing reproval, hides it, lies when questioned, worries lest the theft be discovered, and fails to develop efficiency. The young man loses his temper when reproved, fears the results in the way of being dismissed from his position, becomes discouraged and inefficient, and when he does lose his position, blames everyone but himself and worries about obtaining a new one. So instance after instance might be cited, showing positive daily proof of the effect these mental criminals are bound to produce unless they are promptly exterminated. Indeed, if we may quote some of the really great thinkers, men who believe in cheerful yesterdays and confident tomorrows, to indulge in any of these conditions without making a determined effort to overcome them is either idiocy or insanity. There is no middle course. The thought world and the material world are the same in this respect. Two objects cannot occupy the same space at the same time. Be honest with yourself. Before whining over your hard luck or your trouble or your failure, take a mental inventory. Don't imagine it is necessary to go through a lot of mental torture to do this. Just replace the destructive thought by its opposite idea, and in a very short time, you will find yourself refusing to allow any but the most helpful ideas an abiding place. The accompanying list will give you an idea of what your work will be. You can, of course, add to or take from this indefinitely. Benjamin Franklin found that in his own work of cultivating good qualities, it was well to take an inventory each night to see just how far he had progressed in his work of self-reform. As a consequence of this self-imposed task, he transformed himself from a hot-headed man inclined to argue a question before he had heard it fully discussed, to a patient listener who gained his point by agreeing with the good points presented while uncovering the bad ones. This trait, as it developed, soon gave him a reputation as a diplomat, and to it he owed much of his success. The moment you experience a destructive thought, look for its antonym and persist in keeping your mind fixed upon it. Your mind is subject to your will. Act accordingly. Here is the sample of that list, providing destructive thoughts you will eliminate with constructive thoughts you will cultivate. Anger, self-control, carelessness, persistent effort, changeableness, perseverance, condemnation, approbation, criticism, commendation, dependence, self-reliance, deception, honesty, destruction, construction, discord, harmony, doubt, faith, confidence, failure, success, fault-finding, forbearance, fear, courage, fretfulness, patience, gossip, constructive conversation, grief, joy, hatred, love, indifference, enthusiasm, indolence, industry, indecision, determination, irritation, peaceableness, intemperance, temperance, jealousy, trust, lack, abundance, lack of desire, ambition, lying, truth-telling, poverty, wealth, procrastination, promptness, pretense, genuineness, revenge, forgiveness, selfishness, generosity, self-pity, common sense, self-depreciation, self-confidence, sickness, health, trouble, experience needed, vacillation, concentration, weakness, strength, worry, tranquility. You may want to take a minute here and jot down which of these destructive thoughts have you entertained, and consider the constructive thoughts that you can cultivate. And meet me at the next video as we continue with the book Constructive Thoughts, where now the author is going to talk about constructive thinking, how to get into that, as well as autosuggestion and suggestion. Please do hit the like button, share, and subscribe.